Welcome to the Dental Implant Practices Podcast, where each episode will explore how to integrate dental implants into your practice and into bone, with your host, Dr. Philip Gordon.
Welcome back to another episode of the Dental Implant Practices Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Gordon, and today it's a huge honor for me to have Mike Foley on the show. Mike, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely, Dr. Gordon. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Mike is the owner of Emerginnova, which is the distribution company in the U.S. for the ZERAMEX implant, the ceramic Zirconia implant. And I wanted to have you on because my audience deals with dental implants, and I think is probably well-versed with titanium implants, but this ought to be an eye-opening and ear-opening experience to learn about the Zirconia ceramic implant world. So thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. We're growing quickly. Ceramics are entering mainstream activity. So I think it's a very time-relevant podcast. Great to be on here.
Yeah, thanks. No, I'm in Kansas City, Kansas, and so I'm in the middle of the country, and I know things get to us slower, but I'm already getting patients asking me about ceramic implants. So I know on the coasts, everything happens 5 years earlier, so I'm probably behind time on the coast, but probably right on time for people in the Midwest. So let's jump into some things here. I want to know a little bit about your story. I mean, so you're the CEO and owner of Emerginnova, and you distribute the ZERAMEX. But tell me how you got into the implant world or the distribution world, and kind of give me a little background and bring us up to speed on yourself.
Absolutely. So, like you said, my company is Emerginnova, and I have been in the dental implant business for 15 years. Obviously, like everybody that's listening here, once you get into it, you can't get out, I started with Integer, which is a French dental implant company. They also make, a lot of your listeners will know, the Mont Blanc dental handpieces that are sold with Aseptico motors. And we made a lot of equipment that's used throughout dentistry and a lot in implants, the torque control, which is called the Access Torque from Salvin Dental. And about 5-6 years ago, Integer has a nice implant called Axiom. It's a titanium implant. And I was tasked with the idea of bringing this French implant to the U.S. market, right? It's a nice implant, kind of like an ankylose Noble Active combo. Really neat system, complicated restoratively. But I went through the whole process of how do you bring a new titanium, or what could be a neat new solution to market and bring to the U.S. dental market. And we went through this whole process and eventually said, you know what? The world doesn't need another titanium implant for at a mid-range price and very good quality. Well, we scrapped it. And so we chose not to bring that implant to the U.S. market. But I went through this whole process of what would be something that could be interesting and relevant to and to introduce to the U.S. dentist. And about the same time, I lived down here in Miami, Florida, and went to the IAOCI. That's the International Academy of Ceramic Implants. I had never heard of ceramic implants, but their annual meeting was down here in Miami. So I went and checked it out and became quickly enamored with the idea. It's from a business perspective for myself as a distribution company now, or any of your listeners, you're differentiating yourself is one of the biggest selling advantages of offering ceramic implants, right? Miami's got, thousands of dentists that are offering titanium implants, and it seems to be a rapid race to having the cheaper implant a lot of times. And that's what we see in the market in titanium. The prices have decreased. And it's the same for your audience. The dentists are fighting every day on price. With ceramic implants, we have something completely unique. It's a unique offering for your dentist, and it was for me as a business. So I like that aspect of it. The low-hanging business of ceramic implants at the time, this is 5 years ago, was really entrenched in the biologic, holistic implant world or dental market. And my wife and I lived basically, we shop organic, we go to Whole Foods. We lived a lot of the principles. So a lot of the benefits of ceramic implants applied to my lifestyle. And then also we're down here in Miami. It's a white implant. So you've got three neat features. You're differentiating, got the biologic aspect, and then it's a white implant. So it caught my eye. I came back to that same meeting the very next year, met a doctor named Jens Tarch, who's out of Zurich, Switzerland, and he was using this ZERAMEX system. It wasn't FDA approved at the time, but I met Dr. Tarch. He introduced me to the implant. And flew back and forth to Zurich, went over there a bunch of times, presented them an idea of bringing this to the market. And here we are, 2.5 years later, we're really starting to see some quick growth.
Awesome. That's a great story. You know, it's always interesting how people get into implant dentistry, like you said, but I think once they get into it, they fall in love with it because it's kind of a unique blend of biologics and, engineering and, all the cool stuff that we like. It's got toys and gadgets and, all kinds of different things happening, and it's always changing at a rapid pace. So I think that's fantastic. Let's talk about ceramic implants a bit. So you distribute this ZERAMEX implant. I don't think a lot of people know about ceramic or zirconia implants and what they're really made out of and how they structurally are different. A lot of people may understand. Okay, I prep a crown and I have an Emax crown or a zirconia crown, but what does that mean for an implant? And then later on we can get into how they're made and all that. But let's just talk about the material. What's unique about this material and what exactly is it?
Sure. We've seen a big transition from PFMs over to ceramic, and why are we stopping above the bone? Our motto is let's go all the way. Let's go all ceramic. So to answer your question, it's a neat question. Ceramic and zirconia, people get confused as to which one are we? Are we a ceramic implant, a zirconia implant? The answer is it's both. So historically, a ceramic implant is any oxide. So a bioceramic is an oxide of the original metal. So zirconium is a metal. Zirconium is a metal. We harvest this metal and goes through a chemical transition by where all of the properties of that original metal, which would be heat conductive, magnetic, electric charged, silver in color, are removed. So it's a chemical transition by which a metal becomes a bioceramic. And in our case, the ceramics that we use are mainly composed of zirconia. So zirconium dioxide is zirconia. And in our case, 80% of the implant is zirconia. There's also, they're now alumina and yttria toughened. So it's 3 different kind of ceramics that get lumped as a zirconia implant.
Fascinating. So I'm not a chemist, and I don't even play one on TV, but I do understand a little bit of that. So we're taking zirconium, we're turning it into zirconia, and then obviously it goes through some chemical processing there, turns it into a bioceramic, and now we have something that is metal free. It is white and more bio-friendly. Can you talk a little bit about how they're made? I mean, can you share with just a little bit? I mean, I took a bunch of people on implant tours last year and showed everybody how implants were made at various places using titanium and all that. So I think my listeners have a good understanding of that. But I don't understand how these zirconia implants are made because it's not just probably a feeder bar channel down a Swiss milling machine. I don't know how you make these. Kind of walk me through that.
Love to have you come visit us in Zurich anytime you're available. You're right. It is totally unique, and that's what makes current zirconia implants. They're still much more expensive. Well, not much more, but they're certainly more expensive on a retail price than titanium implants. So what happens is you've got the zirconium metal that we talked about, goes through this chemical transition, and it becomes a white powder. It really is a very fine powder. And our system, there's 2 different ways to process it. ZERAMEX, my company, takes this powder and we make it into what we call bio-hip zirconia. So it goes through a heat, so a thermal pressing, and a sintering process, whereby this powder is pressed really hard into a very dense little rod. And now it is similar to what you're talking about with the titanium, right? Where you got those rods and then you're putting it into a milling center. We take the powder, press it into a rod shape, and then cut it into the shape of the implant. So that, in that sense, it becomes very similar to we do it similar to the titanium process. Straumann has a zirconia implant. They take the powder, same powder as us, put it into a mold press and press it one time into that shape and then sinter it. So there's 2 different processes by which some of these companies are making the zirconia. We do the bio-hip zirconia. Benefit is it's much harder, it's more it's much denser molecules of the zirconia, and that allows you to prep the abutments. So you can take one of our stock abutments, and where a lot, you could be worried about inducing fractures to zirconia because it's this bio-hip zirconia that fracture properties are really removed, and it's a very dense, again, hard product.
Yeah, so it's made more of a press and sintering than it is kind of a taking a metal and spinning it down and cutting it from outside in. You're kind of going right to the end point.
No, so that Straumann does that, right?
Straumann does
takes
it, yeah.
the powder and presses it. Yep. ZERAMEX takes the same powder, heats it, presses it, and sinters it into a rod.
Okay.
Really, really hard rod.
Sure.
And then with the diamond cutting machine, in a process similar, it's not quite the same, but in a process similar to titanium, they're spun into the shape of the implant or cut into the shape of the implant.
Okay. So yours is kind of spun in and cut in after the material has been pressed and cut and sintered. Then it's spun down to that final shape. Is there a surface treatment that goes on these, or are they good to go right then?
Yeah, that's one of the big advantages that modern ceramic implants have had. It's, like titanium, zirconia has gone through an evolution, and 10 years ago the implants were smooth. Now every implant that's on the market is roughened. ZERAMEX does a sandblasted acid etch. That's what most of the companies are currently doing, is sandblasted acid etch.
Yeah. Okay. So that part. So after the rod is made, it is spun down and sandblasted and acid etched. That's not too unlike titanium implants. Obviously, just probably doing it quite a bit different because of its different handling properties and its different chemical makeups. But I think people can maybe understand
once
that
you get
process.
into the rod, it's very similar. Yeah.
Okay.
You're still using big Swiss CNC type machines and milling it out. Once you get it into that rod shape, getting there is a bit of a challenge too, though.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's where all the magic's made, I'm sure. What type of differences are there with these implants? We can talk generically, and then we can walk down to surgically and prosthetically, because a lot of dentistry is understanding your materials, what they can and can't do, and then working within those boundaries. I think anything can work and anything can fail, but you have to understand the properties of your material, of what you're using, and then stay within those boundaries. So what are the main differences? I mean, are we surgically and prosthetically, how are these placed and how are these restored that are significant differences to clinicians that obviously they would want to know?
Absolutely. Great question. A lot of the other ceramic implants that are out there, and the evolution of ceramic implants, has been that they were traditionally a one-piece implant, monoblock, meaning implant and abutment all in one. One of the big takeaways and why our implant system is really taking, doctors are taking a hard look at ceramic implants now, is they've modernized a lot. A lot of the simple techniques of placing the implant, covering, and letting it heal is now available. So with the ZERAMEX system, you're looking at, it looks like a titanium implant at 4.2 or 5.5 diameter, 8, 10, 12 lengths. We're talking about the same kind of nomenclature for our implants. You are then placing the implant at basically bone level. Ceramic implants are white. You don't have, step back here. Titanium implants, we've seen them go through a transition from external hex to internal, Morse taper. All of that is trying to fight what? It's trying to fight the micromovement, right? And so we've moved to both bone level or sub-bone level to try to fight this bone loss created by micromovement. Your question is spot on. Zirconia is a different beast. It's not at all flexible. You're essentially putting two really hard pieces of glass, right? Inflexible, very hard ceramic implant and abutment on top of each other. Very little micro movement. And the unique thing, or the difficult thing that we've now solved, is how do you lock those two together? And what we have is a unique screw. So it's not a metal screw, it's not a plastic screw. We use carbon fiber threads. So it's called the VICARBO screw. It's individual threads of carbon fiber that run vertically down the screw, and it gets pressed into that shape. And that's what really has the flexibility and the high strength to lock a ceramic abutment and implant together. That's one of the biggest challenges, right? It's been, before this screw came around, we didn't know how to lock these two hard pieces of ceramic together, and that's why they were all one piece. Now, with this modern ceramic implant, you've got the very similar workflow to a traditional titanium office, where you place the implant, cover screw, and you can come back, take a fixture level impression, screw down your crown. Other differences would be that ceramic implants are not quite as self-cutting. So surgically, a difference would be that you may need to tap a bit more often. In really hard bone, we advise using a tap. I'd say 15, 20% of the time you're using a tap, which is probably different than if you're using a Nobel Active or one of the more modern aggressive threaded systems. In the United States, currently, we do not have FDA approval for our complete digital workflow. So you're having to take a fixture level impression, which is maybe a bit different for some of you guys that are on the modern edge of digital workflow. After that, it's really becoming very similar to a titanium traditional metal implant.
When you're placing implants with titanium, I like to undersize my osteotomy and just really crank those suckers in. You're saying that might not be as true for undersizing your preps. They may be more true to size and do the thread tap to get the threads in there, and then placing the implant more kind of true to size with the osteotomy. What about, because you guys have that special hardness, is there a Newton centimeter maximum torque that you can get upon insertion that surgeons need to understand? And then if we're bearing these at bone level and coming back, what's the concern with fatigue or failure with the restorations as well?
We'll also undersize the osteotomy, so it's our drills are about 0.6 millimeters smaller than the implant. So you're doing similarly, but I do think that in very hard bone, they're just not as self-cutting. So that's why we have those taps, and yeah, you're right, it would be more of a form fit. The new implant, the XT, is the one that we're really growing and promoting now. It's a tapered implant. We've got Dr. Alvaro Ordonez has this case that's going around on social media that he reached 60 Newton centimeters. From the factory's perspective, that's not necessarily what we want what we're looking for. But I think that your guys would like to hear that, yeah, you can get high torque, high primary stability on these things as well.
Because high primary stability, I think, is very important for your osseointegration. Obviously, if you're going to put a temporary and or a healing abutment on there, it's mandatory. But I like that just because I think it increases your chances of survival. So we've got the implant placed fairly traditionally, and then we're coming back to place the restorations. We can do just like a normal impression coping, and then once we get the prosthetics back, you said there's a special type of kind of screw. I want to go back to that. You've got how are you describing this screw again, and why is it so important? It's called a VICARBO or VICARBO screw, or what's going on with this?
So you're right. So I'll go through that flow again. So we've got the open tray, closed tray impression, just like a traditional titanium implant. Send it off to the lab, and again, because we're using that bio hip, that really solid, strong zirconia, the lab is going to take one of our stock abutments that come in different heights, widths, tissue heights, coronal heights. And because again, it's that biohip zirconia, the lab will prep, shape that abutment, customize the abutment, and then send it back to the doctor with the restorative doc with either the screw already bonded to the abutment, with the crown bonded to the abutment with an access hole for this screw, or a cemented restoration. And so the screw, again, is the key. We call it VICARBO. Maybe I can ping you on Facebook and send you some information that you guys can check it out. It's VICARBO, VICARBO. And again, it is the key for our success. No other implant company has figured out how you lock two really hard pieces of zirconia together. And what this is it's a carbon fiber thread. So it's individual threads of carbon fiber that run vertically down the screw, right? So a whole bunch of threads of carbon fibers that get bonded together and then pressed into the shape of that screw. And this VICARBO screw is extremely strong. They use this in aerospace. Down here in Miami, they're putting carbon fiber threads, or they're really more cables through the cement of this one beautiful, it's a Zaha Hadid architectural building that's going up on the shoreline of Miami, of Biscayne Bay here in Miami. It's got carbon fibers running down the cement to give it some flexibility during hurricanes, but exceptional strength. And on a micro scale, that's what we're doing. This VICARBO screw is a little bit flexible, which helps take the forces of the implant and abutment made of zirconia, but it's exceptionally strong, and it's not one piece. In the U.S., we've had zero fractures or really any issues with this screw.
Excellent, excellent. So it sounds like pretty straightforward workflow on the restoring docs. And are there certain labs that you have kind of partnered with that you would say these are our preferred labs that deal with this more often, or is any qualified lab up to the task? I mean, I know sometimes it's good to work with labs that use this a lot. Do you have anybody in mind, or is any high qualified lab good to go?
Yeah, any high qualified lab is great to go. We definitely have some partners that have helped us, and refine the product, and that we've done some larger cases with. But literally everyone from Glidewell to, your Swiss Dental Lab in Beverly Hills has worked with our implant.
Okay, so talk with me about restorability. What kind of options do you have yet? Is this something that we can start talking about full arch restorations with yet, or are we still in the single space? Can we look at overdentures and or multi-unit abutments, or what are we talking here as far as applications of use?
Absolutely. So yes, we have done I will say this, all on four, not yet possible. Having a major angulation like that on zirconia will make it, will be problematic. What we have done are some kind of 6 parallel type restorations and then we also do have locators. So we have locator attachments. So you could do a fixed removable. And then with regards to a multi-unit, or well, not a multi-unit, but if we're doing some sort of a full arch in the United States, we don't have approval for our scan bodies. This is an FDA issue, it is a ZERAMEX issue because we don't have the FDA approval. But the FDA is just difficult on the registration of digital workflow, scan bodies, and then we don't have non-indexed abutments. So the cases that we've done have been parallel and taken a really good impression.
Sure, and I'm not a big all-on-4 tilting the implants anyway. If I do a full arch, I like to do like 6 parallel. So let's say I have a full arch case and I do 6 parallel and I take really good impressions. My lab can then make abutments and we can cement on a FP3 type restoration, correct? Is that something that you can do?
Correct. Yeah. They're taking our stock abutments and bonding them into the framework or building the framework around the stock abutments. Yeah,
and from my understanding, we're talking with a bunch of implant manufacturers. It's a real challenge to get this approval. It's not that it's not possible. It's just the regulations involved in red tape with getting all through all the approval phase can take thousands of dollars and months to years to jump through their hurdles. So it's probably more so a regulation issue at this point.
You're absolutely right. I mean, even the biggest titanium companies are just now getting these things approved. For some reason, the FDA has just kind of put a block on custom abutments and this digital workflow. You have to go in, and what they want is worst case scenarios, right? And they want the software to be able to limit what those worst case scenarios are. So as a company, we have to go in and define what situations are applicable for a custom abutment or the whole workflow. And it's just going to take time. I think now that Nobel and BioHorizons and other guys have gotten it done, we'll be able to piggyback what these other guys have done, but it's just going to take a bit of time.
Yeah, it just takes time for these things, unfortunately, and the regulations can't keep up with the innovations at times, but that's okay.
That's exactly what's happened, and so they've put a block on it.
So you guys have a couple implants that you could offer. I mean, I wasn't even aware before I started digging into this that two-piece ceramics were out there. So it's interesting. Your healing caps are ceramic. Your gingival formers are ceramic. Your provisional temporary, and
no. So the cover screw that comes with it, healing caps and temp abutments are all PEEK.
Oh, they're all PEEK. Okay, great, excellent. So yeah. So that's a proven material already. So that's not a stretch for people. And it's
easy.
Yeah, that's a super friendly material. And then sorry, your abutments are then the same material as the implants. So
BioHip Zirconia.
Yep, excellent. So tell me about the different implant systems. There are basically kind of 2 of them right now that you guys are pushing. It's the XT, and what's the other one?
P6. So ZERAMEX is a 12-year-old ceramic implant company. Can you believe that? It's not a new thing. In Europe, these ceramic implants have been around for a while. We have made exclusively 2-piece ceramic implants for 12 years, almost 13 years now, actually. Originally, the old one, or the one that we had, it's been an evolution. And prior to coming to the United States, we had a cementable abutment. So you had a normal implant and you cemented an abutment post into that implant. And that was it was kind of more of a post, but they used it as the abutment.
Yeah, more like a post.
We didn't come to the U.S. market with that. So we didn't come to the U.S. market with that. It stayed in Europe. And we came to the U.S. market in 2016 with the P6, which is it's a Straumann clone. It's a tissue. It's the Straumann Standard Plus tissue level implant. with a bit of an external hex. And then you have 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter gingival height abutments, as well as angled. We recently, and that implant has been around in the US market for a little over 2 years now, very successful, and in the worldwide market for over 5 years. We recently came and got approval with the XT, which is our new implant. And for the listeners that haven't placed any of them, I'm going to steer you towards the XT. XT is tapered. So this is the one where we were talking about where you're getting much higher primary stability. And the benefit is it's an internal connection. It's unique. So it's not going to be a Morse taper or an internal hex. It's still unique to fit the properties of, again, really hard, not flexible zirconia. You don't want an internal connection. That would be where you could potentially have a weak point. So it's a modified, really unique beveled system that distributes the forces to the benefit of the material. And so it's a tapered internal connection, and it has a much thinner and longer screw. So this VICARBO screw is longer on the XT, which is really helping the restorative. Much easier than the external hex.
Okay, yeah. No, I think that one makes more sense because of the internal connection, the tapered design. That probably fits most clinicians' checklist there. Now the connection, it's more of like a cross shape connection with some internal taper, but it's got its own connection, obviously, because ceramic implants are their own beast. I mean, obviously, you can't share a connection with a titanium implant because the materials are just, apples and oranges. So it's got its own proprietary connection that fits the structural demands necessary while allowing, the compensation for the material, I imagine. I'm sure that's how it was designed. Is that correct?
You're exactly right. So zirconia, remember, we've talked about really, really hard, not flexible. So you're not going to have this micro movement. So a flat connection is essentially very good for zirconia. And the downside of zirconia, if you have thin-walled zirconia, so if you took, for example, a modern titanium implant that has the screw channel and then a Morse tapered connection, where that Morse taper gets real thin, that's where zirconia could have a tendency to be more brittle and potentially fracture. So we like you said, it's a different beast, and you don't want to treat it the same. This has a little bit of a bevel for the connection and 4 points for alignment, and distributes the forces much better for the material.
Yeah, so absolutely. So it would make sense that it's got its own connection because of all the demands are different. So I get that. Let's look at, let's see, I've got my checklist here. We've talked about the difference in ceramics and zirconia. We've talked about how they're made, the coatings, surgical and prosthetic differences, connections. Let's talk about, I'm a general dentist. I place a ton of implants. I've never placed one of these before. You've got me curious. Where do I go? What do I do? How do I get trained in this? How do I get started? And how do I get a kit and get some implants and get going with this? Let's just say someone says, "Hey, look, I'm in Beverly Hills and I'm getting 4 or 5 patients a week requesting me for these. It's time for me to offer this. What do I do?"
Perfect. That's the guy that we're looking for right now. The idea is patients are requesting it, and if they haven't come to your office requesting it yet, they're going to be soon. And why is that? It's kind of 15 years ago, let's say, just as a simple analogy, 15 years ago, the organic market was for the hippies and the coastal people. Now every soccer mom in the country is shopping at Whole Foods, and people are willing to spend and invest a little bit more of their money and time researching what could be the best solution for them. And so that's why the patients are coming towards us. And what I'd like to convey to your listeners is it's very easy to get it started with ceramic implants. At this point, we've gone through it. You're placing a fixture, you put in a cover screw. Restorative is the same as titanium. Any doctor that has been doing volume titanium implants can transition with success in our implant on his very first case. I will spend a few moments going over some of the differences. Again, like tapping the implant might be a bit more necessary. Overall, very, very similar process. From our company, we've got a training coming up March 21 and 22. You can get a temporary permit for the state of Ohio. come and see one and do one. So I invite anyone to come out to Cleveland, Ohio, and place a ceramic implant, live patient, and get a feel for it. See what little nuances there are before you bring it into your practice, if that makes you feel more comfortable.
So you're the U.S. distributor for this. How does this work? I say, look, I'm used to buying an implant bundle with 20 implants, and it's got, I don't know, it's got all the drills and pieces I need to at least place and, surgically implant 20 of these, and then I buy the impression copings and off I'm going. Is that kind of how it works? Or let's just walk somebody through that piece. Say, look, I don't even need, you've got me sold. I've got 10 people in my office waiting for this. I'm ready to go. I think I can handle it. I've done a lot of things. How do I jump in and get going? Do they just call you and place an order, or how does that work?
You hit the nail on the head. You hit 10. 10's our magic number right now. We're trying to keep it an easy investment. Buy 10 implants. I'll give you the free surgical kit. So $4,300 investment, $4,000 basically, gets you completely started in ceramic implants.
Excellent. And that's not unreasonable, because you're looking at $400 a screw, which, I know guys that are spending $400 a screw right now anyway, and that's not over, that's obviously more than Implant Direct, but it's not more than Nobel or Straumann is already. So I think that's, not a bad investment to get started with, and that gives them 10 implants, the surgical guide, and everything they need to place those first 10 implants, right?
Correct. Yeah, we try to make it an easy intro kit. Like you said, retail is $430 of our implants, but to get started, I want to make it as easy as possible. We do loaner kits. If you really need to just try one before you want to jump in, I'm happy to send a loaner kit and try it. 90% of the time, if I get a loaner kit out there, you're going to choose to incorporate ceramic implants into your practice. So it's a good investment of our time with you.
Excellent. So you guys on your website, what's the website you want me to direct people to? Is it the ZERAMEX.com?
Well, it's a great question. We have Emerginnova is my company.
Okay, so let's go there.
Innovations is where that came from. And Emerginnova is an online shopping site and has some landing pages to the training and to the new XT system, as well as links back to if you want more detailed information on the implants, you can find it here, and it'll kick you back over to the ZERAMEX USA website. But Emerginnova is probably the best place to start. Yeah,
so spell that for me and my listeners. I'll be sure to add that in the show notes.
Thanks. A little plug. I appreciate that. Emerginnova, Emerginnova. Emerging Innovations is where that comes from.
All right. And you're out of, said Miami, Florida, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
Sunny Miami today.
Absolutely. So people want to shop for ZERAMEX, they can there. You have other biological implant products there. Tell everybody what you got to offer at your site. Obviously, the ZERAMEX is what we're talking about today. Let's just talk about your company for a moment. What all do you have available? What are you working with? I mean, obviously, if you're in the implant game, you're not just selling implants. You've got other things there. So just briefly, what are people going to find there, and what links are available to them?
Sure, great. I started the company with the intent of distributing the ZERAMEX brand. And what I've kind of found is the same patient that wants a ceramic implant might want PRF, or might want PRF. The doctor might want PRF training or synthetic graft materials. So we started offering some more and more of these kind of biologic-friendly solutions that partner well with the implant. And then we have some of the equipment as well, implant motors, again, the PRF machine and things like that. So the tools and tricks that accompany ceramic implants, as well as the training. The training courses are important.
Absolutely. So you've got a lot of things here that I've already got in my office. You've got centrifuges, the Futurient cam. You've got all the Chocron Softbrux, the Ostel DI.
You use that Futurient cam? That thing's great.
Yeah, I've got the Future. I've podcasted with most of these companies that are on your site, so I'm glad to see you've got a nice, diverse sales operation here with good companies. The different bone grafting materials and all that. The things with bond appetite and all. So you've got a good lineup. I mean, obviously, what brings them in might be the ceramic implant, but then, like you said, that kind of person, that kind of clientele wants other patient-friendly things. They might be willing to pay you for those outcomes to be more successful and holistically and aesthetically driven. So that's where these other offerings make a lot of sense. So I would encourage people to go check you out. You're at the Emerginnova, Emerginnova.com. I'll add a link to that. I'm going to trying with these implants to some extent. I'm going to get 10, I guess, and slug those in and see how I do. I don't know if I'm going to, do them all the time, but I think it's good to have in your offering. Like you said, I think moving forward, more and more people are going to be requesting them. And then, who knows, maybe 10 years from now, it's the standard of care. It's just, we're not sure where this thing's going yet, but they're not going away. I know that. So I think it's important for people to at least become familiar with it and know who the main players are, and get in while the getting's good, I think.
You said it right. It's quickly changing, right? Straumann is involved. Nobel Biocare is involved. I can quickly explain that relationship. Nobel Biocare is distributing the implant that we make. So Nobel Biocare has jumped in and is backing our company. They're distributing under their own brand, the Nobel Pearl, which is the exact same thing as the ZERAMEX XT. ZERAMEX makes it. I invite all your listeners to buy through me. I'd prefer that. We are the manufacturer, and we've got better pricing, and we are obviously focused on ceramic implants. One of the things that I think we do that's pretty unique that I'd like to share with you is we try to help our customers, right? So we are building and are active all over social media and growing direct to the patient, educating the patient on the differences of white, natural ceramic implants versus the titanium option. So doctors that are choosing to partner up with us, with my company, ZERAMEX and Emerginnova, are going to have that added benefit of having us work with them to reach new patients.
Absolutely. And I used to be a Nobel customer, but I found that the customer-client relationship part wasn't there. And so that's where they lost me. So I do a lot of my business with smaller businesses like yourself, and find that
we appreciate it.
That's where the relationships are made and kept, and I think that's important. So look forward to working with you, Mike. I really appreciate your time today. I know we both have some busy days to get back to, so I will get this going and get it up for people. I'll list all your links, and really appreciate you spending some time with me, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.